Elderly woman loses memory. And after walking for hours is shocked to find her photo on a poster. Heartwarming story. Mary woke up that morning with a disturbing emptiness in her chest. Something felt off. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for a clue to explain the discomfort, but everything was in place. The photos of her grandchildren on the wall, the antique clock on the nightstand, the recipe book open on the table. However, none of it felt familiar. She got up slowly, feeling her joints protest, and went to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was bustling with its daily routine, but she didn't recognize those streets. "I need to go out. I need to understand what's happening," she murmured to herself as she hurriedly dressed in a coat and a pair of comfortable shoes. Mary left the house without a clear destination. Each step was an effort to remember something that felt real, but her mind was foggy, filled with disconnected fragments. She passed by people who greeted her with kind smiles, but no face sparked any memory. Fear began to grow inside her, a sense of being lost in her own life. After walking for hours, Mary found herself in a busy square. That place, however, brought a slight feeling of déjà vu. She sat on a bench, trying to catch her breath and organize her thoughts. It was then that something caught her attention. A large, colorful poster attached to a lamppost. On the poster, a photo of a smiling woman with well-groomed gray hair, bright eyes, and a kind expression. Mary blinked several times, incredulous. That woman was her. Above the photo, the word "missing" in bold letters, followed by a phone number. A young woman passing by noticed Mary's state of shock and approached her. "Are you okay?" she asked with concern. Mary pointed to the poster, her voice trembling. "That's me, but I don't know what's happening. I don't remember anything." The young woman looked at the poster and then at Mary, her eyes widening. "Wait here, I'll call the number," she said, quickly taking out her phone. While the young woman made the call, Mary tried to pull any memory that could explain the situation. But her mind was a blank slate, devoid of answers. Confusion mixed with fear, and she felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Who am I? Why can't I remember?" Minutes later, a tall man with gray hair arrived at the square, breathing heavily. He looked worried, his eyes scanning the area until they found Mary. When he saw her, a mix of relief and emotion appeared on his face. "Mary!" he exclaimed, running towards her. "Thank God you're okay!" She looked at him, trying to force a memory. Do I know you?" she asked hesitantly. He nodded, tears in his eyes. "It's me, John, your husband." He held her hands tenderly. "You disappeared 2 days ago. We were all so worried." Mary frowned, trying to process the information. 2 days? I don't remember anything. How did I get here?" John sighed, gently squeezing her hands. "You went out for your morning walk and never came back. We organized searches, called the police, put up posters all over the city. We didn't know what could have happened." The young woman who had helped Mary approached, watching the scene with a relieved smile. "I found her here looking at the poster," she explained. John thanked the young woman and turned his attention back to Mary. "Let's go home, my love. I'll take care of you." She nodded, still dazed. As they walked back home, Mary felt a mixture of emotions. John seemed genuinely worried, and there was a subtle comfort in his presence, even though the memories were still absent. Each step beside him felt like a small advance towards recovering her identity. When they arrived home, John helped her sit on the living room sofa. "I'll make you some tea. Relax a bit, okay?" Mary looked around the house, trying to find something that would spark her memory. Family photos were scattered on the walls, and a photo album was open on the coffee table. She started flipping through it, seeing images of herself with John, on trips, at parties, happy moments. But everything seemed like a distant movie, as if she were watching someone else's life. When John returned with the tea, he sat beside her. "We'll get through this together, you will remember, I promise." Mary smiled timidly. "Thank you, John, I really want to remember." He held her hand firmly. "And you will, Mary. We'll do this together day by day." The following days were challenging for Mary. Each morning she woke up with a timid hope that the memories would return, but the fog in her mind remained. John was tireless in his efforts to help her, sharing stories, showing photos, and bringing objects that might spark memories. "Look at this necklace, Mary. You wore it on our wedding anniversary last year," he said, holding a delicate piece of jewelry. She touched the necklace, trying to force a memory, but only a vague feeling of familiarity emerged. "I wish I could remember, John. Everything feels so distant." John nodded, the sadness evident in his eyes. "I know, my love. We'll keep trying. I believe in you." One day, while they were in the garden tending to the plants, a neighbor approached. "Hello, John. Hello, Mrs. Mary. How are you today?" Mary looked at the neighbor, a slight sense of recognition passing through her. "Hello," she replied politely. John smiled at the neighbor. "We're doing well, thank you. Mary is recovering little by little." The neighbor nodded, looking hesitant. "If you need anything, please let us know. We're all here to help." After the neighbor left, John looked at Mary with a glimmer of hope. "You recognized him, didn't you?" Mary bit her lip, trying to find the words. "Yes, a little. I feel like I've seen him before, but I don't remember where." John hugged Mary, encouraging her. "That's already progress. Let's take it one step at a time." As the days passed, small memories began to surface in Mary's mind, like pieces of a puzzle slowly fitting together. She remembered a trip to the beach with John, a surprise birthday party organized by her grandchildren, and simple, quiet moments at home. However, a large void still remained, and she felt that something important was missing. One afternoon, while John was out running errands, Mary decided to explore the house in search of something that might help fill the gaps in her memory. She went up to the attic, where there were old boxes full of memories stored over the years. Opening one of the boxes, Mary found a collection of letters tied with a red ribbon. Curious, she untied the ribbon and started reading the letters. They were correspondences between her and John, written in the early years of their marriage. Each letter was a declaration of love, full of promises and shared dreams. One letter in particular caught her attention. It was a letter she had written to John, mentioning a secret she had not yet revealed. "John, there is something I need to tell you, something I have never mentioned before. It's about my family and what happened before we met." Mary frowned, trying to remember what that secret was about, but her mind was still foggy. She put the letter back in the box, determined to find out more about her past. When John returned, Mary waited for him in the living room with the letter in hand. "John, do you know what this letter is about?" "I wrote about a secret, but I can't remember what it was." John took the letter and read it, his eyes widening slightly. "I remember this, Mary. You mentioned something about your family, but never went into details. You said you would tell me when you were ready." Mary sighed, feeling the frustration growing. "I need to know, John. I need to understand what happened before we met." John held her hands tenderly. "Let's find out together, Mary. Maybe we can find someone who can help us fill in these gaps." Determined to help Mary, John suggested they visit an old family friend, Mr. Smith, who always seemed to know everything about everyone. Maybe he could offer some clue about Mary's past and the secret she mentioned in the letter. The next day, Mary and John went to visit Mr. Smith. He lived in an old house in the city center, surrounded by a beautiful garden full of flowers. When they arrived, Mr. Smith welcomed them with a warm smile. "Mary, John, what a pleasant surprise." Come in," he said, guiding them to the living room. After exchanging some cordial words, John explained the situation. "Mr. Smith, Mary recently lost her memory and we're trying to help her recover her memories. We found a letter mentioning a secret about her family, but we don't know what it is about." Mr. Smith frowned, thoughtful. "Ah, yes, I remember something. Mary, your family had a somewhat troubled past before you married John." Mary looked at him, anxious. "What do you know, Mr. Smith? Please tell me." "Mr. Smith sighed and began to speak. "Your father was a very reserved man, Mary. He had businesses that not everyone knew about. There was an incident many years ago, something involving a big misunderstanding and an unjust accusation. Your father was accused of something he didn't do, and it deeply affected your family." Mary felt a shiver run down her spine. "What happened to him?" "He was imprisoned, but after a few years it was proven that he was innocent. However, the damage to the family's reputation was already done. It was a difficult time for all of you, especially for your mother, who had to fight hard to keep the family together. Mary held John's hand tightly. That's what I was trying to remember. My father. I remember him now, how kind he was and always protected us. Mr. Smith smiled softly. That's right, Mary. He was a good man, and it was a tragedy what happened. But you all overcame it, and you found happiness with John. John hugged Mary, whispering words of comfort in her ear. You're starting to remember, Mary. Let's keep looking for more answers. Mary nodded, feeling more determined than ever. Now that she had a clue about her past, she was ready to face whatever came next and recover all her memories one by one. Mary woke up the next day with a renewed sense of purpose. John was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast and she joined him, feeling more connected than in the days before. Good morning, my love, he said, smiling as he saw her. How do you feel today? Mary smiled back. Better, I think I'm starting to remember more things. The conversations with Mr. Smith helped. John nodded. That's great. Let's keep looking for more answers. I think we should visit some places that were important to you in the past. Maybe that will help recover more memories. Mary agreed. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. Let's start with the old neighborhood where I grew up. Maybe seeing the places where I spent my childhood will help bring back more memories. After breakfast, they headed to the old neighborhood. As they walked through the narrow, familiar streets, Mary felt a mix of nostalgia and sadness. Each corner brought flashes of memories, faces of childhood friends, games in the street, and the house where she grew up. When they arrived at her old family home, Mary stopped in front of the gate. The house was a bit worn by time, but still had the same welcoming aura. This is the house where I grew up, she said, emotional. So many memories here. John held her shoulder, offering support. Let's go inside. Maybe being in the house will help even more. The door was unlocked and they went in. The living room was dusty, but the furniture and objects were still there, as if waiting for someone's return. Mary walked through the house, touching the furniture, feeling the familiar texture of the past. Each room brought a wave of memories. In the room where she slept as a child, Mary found a box of old toys. Opening the box, she saw a cloth doll her mother had made for her. She held the doll, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. I remember this doll. My mother made it for me when I was 5 years old. John smiled, caressing her shoulder. You're starting to remember, Mary. These are your memories, your past. Mary nodded, wiping away the tears. Yes, they are my memories, and I want to recover all of them. As the days passed, Mary and John continued to explore significant places from her past. They visited the school she attended, the park where she used to play, and even the church where they got married. Each visit brought back small memories, pieces of her identity that began to fit together again. One day, while they were at the park, Mary met an old childhood friend, Susan. They hugged warmly, and Susan was surprised to hear about Mary's memory problem. Mary, it's so good to see you. I heard what happened, and I'm here to help in any way I can, said Susan. Mary smiled, feeling comforted by her friend's presence. Thank you, Susan. I'm starting to remember more things, but there's still a lot that's lost. Susan thought for a moment and then suggested, You know, Mary, maybe we could organize a get-together with some of our old friends. Seeing familiar faces might help bring back more memories. Mary and John thought it was an excellent idea and started planning a gathering at the park, inviting old friends and family. On the day of the meeting, the park was filled with people Mary vaguely recognized. As she talked to each one, more memories surfaced, like gentle waves washing over her mind. An old teacher of Mary's, Mrs. Johnson, hugged her warmly. Mary, I remember how dedicated you were as a student and always helped your classmates. You had a heart of gold. Mary smiled, feeling a comforting warmth. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I'm starting to remember that. Your literature classes were my favorite. Another friend, Tom, laughed as he remembered the mischief they used to get into together. You always had the best ideas for our games, Mary. We had so much fun. Mary laughed too, feeling more connected to her past. Yes, I remember that now. It was such a happy time. With each conversation, each hug, Mary felt more pieces of herself coming back. She realized that despite the difficulties, she was not alone. She had John's love, the support of friends and family, and a past full of precious moments that were still there, waiting to be rediscovered. As the weeks went by, Mary continued to recover more of her memories. Each day, she felt more like the person she used to be. John was always by her side, offering unconditional love and support. One day while they were in the living room, Mary looked at John and said, "I remember something important, John. Something about our first meeting. Do you remember?" John smiled. "Of course I remember. It was at the bookstore where you were buying a book of poetry." Mary nodded, her eyes shining with the memory. "Yes, and you offered to help me find the right book. We talked for hours that day." John laughed. "And I was so nervous trying to impress you with my knowledge of poetry." Mary caressed John's hand. "It was the beginning of everything, wasn't it? Our life together, our journey." John nodded, his eyes full of love. "Yes, it was the beginning of a beautiful story, and I'm so happy you're starting to remember everything." Mary felt a wave of gratitude. Despite the challenges, she was determined to keep recovering her memories and the life she had with John. They had built something beautiful together, and she wanted to celebrate every moment. As the days passed, Mary began writing a journal, recording her memories as they returned. She wanted to have a record of her journey, a testament to her resilience and the love she shared with John. One night, while writing in her journal, Mary found an old photograph hidden between the pages. It was a picture of her and John, taken at a picnic. They were smiling, happy, with the sun shining over them. She showed the photo to John. "Do you remember this day?" John smiled, taking the photo. "Yes, it was one of the happiest days of my life. We spent the whole day laughing and talking." Mary looked at the photo, feeling grateful to have so many precious memories to recover. "I want to remember all the days like this, John. I want to remember all the happy moments we had." John hugged Mary, kissing her forehead. "And we will, my love. We'll remember everything together." Time continued to pass, and Mary felt more and more whole. She and John began planning a trip to visit important places from her past, places that might help recover even more memories. The first stop would be the town where they spent their honeymoon. When they arrived at the small coastal town, Mary felt a wave of nostalgia. "I remember this place," she said, looking at the sea. "I remember how we were enchanted by the view." John smiled. "It was a wonderful time. Let's revisit all the places we knew here." They spent the next few days exploring the town, visiting cafes, beaches, and small shops. Each place brought back a memory, a reminder of the love they shared. One afternoon, while walking along the beach, Mary stopped and looked at the horizon. "John, I remember something important. I remember a promise we made to each other here on the beach." John looked at her, intrigued. "What promise, Mary?" Mary smiled, clearly remembering. "We promised that we would always be together no matter what happened. We promised we would face any challenge together." John felt tears in his eyes. "And we have kept that promise, my love. We're together facing everything hand in hand." Mary hugged John, feeling grateful to have such a dedicated and loving partner. "I love you, John. Thank you for never giving up on me." John kissed her forehead. "I love you, Mary, and I will never give up on you." Back home, Mary and John were more united than ever. Mary's memories were almost complete, and she felt more confident each day. One night, while they were in the garden, Mary looked at the starry sky and felt an inner peace. "John, I think I'm finally whole again. My memories are back and I feel complete." John smiled, holding her hand. "I'm so happy for you, Mary. You've been through so much and yet you found your way back." Mary looked at him, feeling deep gratitude. "And all thanks to you. Your love and support made all the difference." John hugged her, feeling emotional. "We did this together, Mary, and we'll continue together facing whatever comes." Mary felt ready for the future, knowing she had John by her side. Together, they had overcome one of the greatest challenges of their lives and emerged stronger and more united. She knew that no matter what the future held, they would be ready to face it together, hand in hand. And so Mary and John continued to write their story, a story of love, resilience, and the unwavering strength of being together, no matter what happened.